Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with fem Kyuubi, Yang and Bambietta? Part 1. Huge shout out to RUSTYCAGE 500 for this story. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, so without wasting any time let's get into the video. October 10, day of Kyuubi's attack. October 10, it was seemingly normal day in Konohexip, the gigantic nine-tailed fox currently attacking it. A group of people are speeding through the village toward the spot where the Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze, is currently fighting with the giant fox. The first person is a man around 180 centimeters in height with bright sky blue eyes opened wide. He appears to be an early to mid 20-year-old person. He is unusually thin and tall with very sharp features, giving him a skeletal appearance, and bears unusual silver hair. He wears black kimono shirt, dark gray Anbu-styled pants, black strapped-up shinobi sandals and white sash tied around his waist, to which a wakizashi with light blue hilt is tied. His name is Jinichimaru. The second person is a man of around 183 centimeters in height. He's a tall, lean-built man with light skin and gray eyes. His hair is messy and light blonde, almost pale, with strands framing the sides of the face and hanging between his eyes. He wears a dark coat, which sports a white diamond pattern along its bottom half, with a dark green shirt and pants underneath, along with black shinobi sandals. In his hand is a beige-colored shikamazu with a curved handle and silver base. His name is Urahara Kisuke. The third person is also a man of around 180 centimeters in height. He is a tall, muscular man with spiky black hair with noticeable sideburns and brown eyes. He wears black kimono shirt, black Anbu pants, black shinobi sandals and a red sash tied around his waist, to which Itachi with a red handle and hexagonal tsuba is attached. His name is Isshin Shiba. The fourth and last person was a fair-skinned man of around 176 centimeters in height with blue eyes and white hair, with bangs combed to one side. He wears gray long-sleeved shirt and gray pants, along with black shinobi sandals. In his left hand is a short white bow without bowstring. His name is Riken Ishida. After few more minutes of jumping from roof to roof and then from tree to tree, the four of them arrived at the peculiar scene of a blonde-haired man fighting another man with a mask covering his face. "Bam, Kmai!" Isshin shouted and jumped forward. He unsheathed his sword, which immediately began to release a flame-like energy. "Itsuga Tenshim!" He shouted and swung his blade down on the masked man, whose eyes went wide under his mask. A crescent moon of bright blue energy shot out from the tip of his blade and slammed into the man, who released a pain-filled scream. The wave of energy traveled along with the masked man before dissipating 100 meters away, with the masked man falling onto the ground in a heap. Isshin sheathed his sword and ran up to the blonde-haired man kneeling on the ground, panting heavily. "God damn it, Kmai, what the hell were you thinking?" Isshin shouted and slapped the man on top of his head, causing him to fall down face first in the ground. The blonde man quickly regained his composure and stood up on wobbly legs. "I'm sorry, Isshin-senpai, I didn't have a choice." Minato Namikaze said weakly and began to walk away, only to wobble and trip on his own legs. Before he could fall down, Isshin kneeled before him so that he fall on Isshin's back. "Where the hell do you think you're going, Kmai?" Isshin asked sternly, his eyes narrowing. Minato only shook his head and looked forward. "Isshin-senpai, what I'm about to do will be something you will beat me up for in afterlife, but I must do this. Kyuubi is Rampaging, have no choice but use Shikifujin to seal it. It's wifeless. Take care of Kushina and Naruto for me." With that said, Minato disappeared in a flash, leaving a stunned group behind. "My Umaranjust, what are you planning?" Isshin asked himself before quickly standing up and turning toward the three other men. "Let's go, that brat wants to use Shikifujin." That was everything it took for all four of them to speed toward the last place they saw Kyuubi. After several more minutes they arrived at the horrible scene. Minato and a red-haired woman, Kushina Uzumaki, was. All four men quickly jumped in front of Minato. "Brat, what the hell were you thinking? You too, Kushina?" Isshin yelled at them, surprising the remaining man, as Isshin wasn't one to lose composure so easily. The tears streaming down his face weren't helping at all. Minato looked up at the man who trained him and smiled. "I'm sorry, senpai. Cough, I wasn't planning on cough that. Urahara senpai." Cough, Minato called out. The other blonde-haired man stepped out in front of him with a grim expression. "Brat, we the hell you did that? Obviously there was another way." Urahara said, to which Minato chuckled and turned, coughing up more blood. Urahara shook his head sadly. "Urahara senpai, cough, please take care of Naruto. Cough, I want him to be seen as a hero for holding back Kyuubi. Cough, can you do that?" he asked with a weak smile, the light slowly fading from his eyes. Urahara and the rest nodded firmly, which brought a smile to Minato's face. "It's papeless. Tell Naru-kun that his parents loved him, okay?" Kushina said weakly, tears leaking down her face. Isshin tried to wipe his eyes without much success, while Urahara tried hard to hold back his tears. "Alright, Sniff, we will take care of him, Baka Kmai." Urahara said slowly. Both Minato and Kushina smiled before the light left their eyes, and Kyuubi disappeared completely. The two fell down lifelessly, causing the four-man to bow their heads in sadness. The only sound breaking the silence was the crying of the newborn Naruto. After few more minutes Urahara stepped forward and in a puff of smoke, two white coffins with glass lids appeared on the ground near Minato and Kushina. He opened the coffins and put them inside before closing the lids. Almost immediately a green glow surrounded both bodies. Akakmai sniff, why did you have to play a hero, damn it? Urahara choked out, tears streaming down his face. Even Riken and Jin began to cry. After several seconds a group of people jumped down near them followed by gasps. Minato, you idiot. A voice of Hiruzen Sarutobi broke the silence. Isin, Kisuke, Jin and Riken turned toward the third Hokage with grim expressions. Sunday Emi-sama must talk. July 15 years after Kyuubi's attack, day before graduation morning. Through the already busy streets of Konoha, a 15-year-old boy around 173 centimeters in height was walking. He has shoulder-length blonde, spiky hair with bangs pulled to the left side of his face and held in place by a small white hexagonal headpiece with red kanji for sky on it. He also have blue eyes with slitted pupils, along with 3 thick whisker marks on each cheek. His face put into a seemingly permanent scowl. He wears black form-fitting shirt, black pants tucked into black shinobi sandals, a kunai pouch tied to his right thigh, 3 scrolls holsters tied to his left thigh, and long black haori over it all. The haori has a completely white hexagon on the back with red kanji for fox inside the hexagon. The haori from the thighs down split into 9 coattails resembling fluffy fox tails. The haori is also held together in the front by a orange X-shaped cloth near his neck. Tied to his back beneath the haori by a red cloth is an dachi with an orange hilt. The tsuba has a teardrop shape, with the base of the drop arsing over the top of the blade and the point of the drop pointing below the cutting edge. A row of several tiny teardrop-shaped holes decorates the bottom of the curve, and a small ring, approximately 2 in diameter, dangles off the tip of the teardrop. Most of the villagers and shinobi sent glares his way, but he simply returned the glares, immediately causing them to look down in fear. DSK, Wicklings, few years ago I would probably let them stare at me like that, but not anymore. Naruto thought and focused on his destination, Ninja Academy. He decided to turn off his surrounding and just walk forward. Naru-kun, so scary. A feminine, mocking and cheerful voice sounded from inside Naruto's head, causing him to groan. Oh, great Kik-chan, can you tell me why you didn't talk to me yesterday? Naruto thought, to which Kyuubi pouted. I was horny and you didn't came here for few days now, I'm getting lonely. She whined, which brought a small grin to Naruto's face. People stared at him in fear, especially when his fox-like eyes landed on someone accidentally. Tell you what, I was also horny, but I accepted the invitation from that lovely housewife from the neighboring building. Her husband isn't satisfying her, so I just told pedwo am I to ignore such hot piece of ass as her. He thought, a menacing growl sounded from inside his mind. That whore, when I get out of here I will find her and I will kill her. Naruto sighed and shook his head. Pichantless, don't do that, besides, it will be another few months before Urahara-sensei will finish your body. You should blame that old goat Sarutobi for that. If not for that trigger seal he placed on my body, I would channel more of your chakra for Urahara-sensei to be pies without anyone knowing. DSK, you're no fun but you're a good mate, at least, and damn skillful at that. At that Naruto couldn't help but chuckle. He glanced up and smirked upon seeing the academy gate before him. Look at that, we're already here. Naruto said aloud. People backed away from him, and few ninja tensed. Naruto felt that and turned his head to glare at them. What are you staring at, do you all want to die? Naruto asked with a little growl for emphasis. Almost immediately everyone returned to what they were doing before. Oh my god, you're all a bunch of pussies, fearing a 15-year-old boy. Kyuubi said and started laughing. Naruto also chuckled and began to walk forward. He absent-mindedly caught a kunai that was sailing toward his head and stored it into his kunai pouch. Thanks for that, I will need it. He said loud enough for the person that threw the kunai to hear. The kunoichi with purple hair styled into short, spiky, fan ponytail grinned and disappeared into shadows of the alley. Naruto sighed as he opened the door to the classroom. All eyes immediately landed on him, causing him to sigh once more. He walked up the stairs and stopped beside the wide-eyed girl with dark blue hair kept in a short Harem cut. The girl blushed and looked up at him. Naruto smiled and petted her head. Good morning, Hinata. Naruto said calmly, causing the girl to blush even harder before she smiled sweetly. Naruto-kun, good morning. She said back shyly and bowed her head. Naruto stopped petting her and sat in a chair on her right. He tilted his head back and performed a mock salute. At the table behind him 2 boys are sitting. One of them sitting right behind Naruto is a boy with brown eyes and black hair pulled into a spiky ponytail. His name is Shikamaru. Sitting behind Hinata is a boy with spiky brown hair that sticks upward. His name is Shinjai. Yo, Shika, CHM, what's up? Shikamaru sighed at that. Troublesome as always, and what about you, how many people you scared this morning? Naruto smirked at the question. Above 20 people for sure, I still can't believe that they fear an academy student. He said with his smirk stretching even wider. Not any academy student, a damn hot academy student, and that's coming from me, the sexiest being you ever saw. Kyuubi said. Naruto looked forward and grinned. Oh, you sexy flatter, I could go there and funk the red out of your eyes right now. His thought caused Kyuubi to let out an excited squeal. Naruto looked left and saw Uchiha Sasuke, the greatest pain in the ass, glaring at him. What are you doing here, dope? You should be removed from academy. Sasuke said angrily. Naruto smirked at him. You know, you could be more intimidating if you were more intimidating. Naruto said calmly and turned toward him. Sasuke seethed at this. Are you mocking me, and Uchiha? Sasuke nearly screamed. He stood up and glared at Naruto, who quickly looked shocked and began to wave his hands in front of him in a fake fear. By now everyone gathered around them with fangirls shouting about how amazing Sasuke was. Oh no, 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 no. Sasuke smirked down at Naruto, who smirked back and dropped his hands to the side. A smug look replaced his fake shock. BFF, yeah. Naruto said that and looked right into Sasuke's eyes. He saw the hatred he waited for. Finally, that village beep sucker was annoying the shit out of me. I must congratulate Sandayami. It was a great idea to create another council, especially with civilians on it. Naruto thought sarcastically, causing Kyuubi to begin laughing. Naruto watched as Sasuke lunged at him and tried to punch him, a keyword tried. For Naruto, everything moved in slow motion, almost like a slug traveling across the road. Naruto sighed inwardly and caught the fist in his right hand like it was nothing. His bored expression unnerved Sasuke, who looked shocked at his own fist. Lame really are a council's beep sucker, Sasuke-chan. Naruto said mockingly. At that, Sasuke's shock was quickly replaced by anger. He beeped his right fist back and attempted to hit Naruto again, but Naruto just tightened his grip on Sasuke's left fist and threw him at the classroom entrance just as two girls tried to enter, one with long blonde hair and another with pink hair. To the shock of everyone present, Sasuke sailed at the door and slammed into the two girls, launching all three of them outside the class and into the corridor. Nah, Naruto-kun, you shouldn't fight in here. Hinata's shy voice sounded from behind Naruto. He turned his head toward her and smiled. But Hinata-chan, he was the first to attack me. Hinata blushed and began to play with her fingers. Yo, you know what I mean. That only caused Naruto to grin. I know. Naruto said and looked at all the gathered. He started it, right? Everyone quickly nodded and returned to their seats. Just then the blonde girl walked into the class and glared at Naruto. What the hell, Naruto, you could kill me. Ino screamed at him. Naruto blinked and began to scratch the back of his head. Oh, it was you, Ino-chan, sorry guess. At that, Ino only pouted and sat in the chair in front of Hinata. Naruto looked at the chair before him and blinked. Sitting there was a boy with dark bushy brown hair wearing dark round glasses. Shino-san, I didn't saw you there, sorry. Everyone from the group blinked and looked at Shino. How did he get there? Was everyone thought. Shino himself nodded in Naruto's direction. It's alright, Naruto-san. With that, Shino returned to looking ahead. Sasuke, supported by Sakura, walked into the class, both sending glares at Naruto, who ignored them. Following them was a boy with a white dog laying on top of his head. The boy, Kiba Inuzuka, seethed upon seeing Naruto. Hey, bastard, what the hell do you think you're doing? Kiba shouted angrily, pointing his finger at Naruto. The dog on top of his head, Akamaru, whined at that. Naruto blinked and looked down. Well, sitting I guess, was that so hard to figure? Naruto said teasingly, which only angered Kiba more. Oh god, not again. Shikamaru said with a sigh and placed his forehead on top of the table. The rest of the group also sighed as Kiba began to walk toward Naruto from his left side. Naruto just smirked and crossed his arms over his chest. Kiba, upon nearing Naruto, beeped his right fist back and sent a punch at Naruto's shoulder. Naruto's smirk became menacing as Kiba's fist slammed into something before Naruto's shoulder. He screamed in pain and quickly stepped back holding his throbbing hand. Shino saw that and raised his eyebrow. Ah, bastard, what did you do? Kiba asked angrily. Naruto turned toward him and Kiba froze in fear. Naruto's eyes turned a menacing red color. Sit down, mutt, I'm an alpha, that's as good answer as you can get. Naruto said coldly. Kiba flinched and walked to the last desk near the window, as far into the corner as he could. Naruto's eyes turned back to blue color. He huffed in annoyance and looked at Shikamaru with a grin. Nah, Shikagus what? Shikamaru just groaned and shook his head. I don't want to guess anything too troublesome. Shikamaru said without lifting his head from the desk. You're no fun. Naruto said with a huff. He turned to the front and sighed. God, they sure take their time to get here. Naruto said in slight annoyance. Everyone from the small group nodded. After 20 more minutes, two men walked inside the classroom. One of them has white shoulder-length hair and green eyes. The other one has brown hair kept in a spiky ponytail, dark eyes and a scar running across his nose. Alright, listen up everyone, tomorrow is a graduation day, but today will be the field test. Let's go to the training ground. Haruka said, to which Naruto sighed in relief. Finally, I was afraid we will sit here for an hour. He said and stood up. Everyone walked out from the classroom and followed after Mizuki and Haruka outside the academy where the training ground was. Okay everyone, let's start with accuracy test. Naruto, you first. At that Naruto sighed. Haruka-sensei, I don't think it is a good idea, I would rather go last, you know, to see how everyone else are doing it. Haruka hummed and thought and nodded after few seconds. Alright Naruto, then Sasuke, you're next. Sasuke smirked at Naruto, who looked completely unfazed. Mizuki handed the 5 kunai to Sasuke and backed away. Sasuke took the stance, and when Haruka signaled, he threw all 5 kunai in quick succession, amazing most people. The 3 kunai hit 10, one hit 9, while the last one hit 7. Sasuke's fangirls began to shout and jump at how amazing Sasuke is, which only boosted his already enormous ego. Very good Sasuke, 46 points. Next is Sakura Haruno. Naruto tuned out everything in favor of speaking with Kyuubi. Nakik-chan, what would you do when Urahara-sensei finished the body? Naruto asked. Kyuubi hummed and thought. After several seconds a giggle escaped her mouth. Well, I have an idea, but you probably won't like it. Naruto raised his eyebrow at that. What idea? Another giggle from Kyuubi caused even more confusion. It's at least 5. Naruto tilted his head to the side. Everyone watched him in confusion except Shikamaru, who long ago figured what Naruto hold and was fine with that. Aren't kids a young foo? A blush appeared on Naruto's face when he noticed what Kyuubi was implying. Yep, so what do you think, will you help me with that? Kyuubi asked in a seductive tone. Chan, I don't think it is a good idea, mean, I won't be a good father of that, I'm sure. Kyuubi only huffed at that. Bullshit, I wouldn't be able to find a better material for a father than you, besides you're my mate and an alpha, it's your damn job to give me kids to take care of. Alright Kik, we will talk about it later. If you want kids so much then I can give them to you and he will try to be. I love you Naru-kun. Kyuubi shouted, to which Naruto grabbed his head and hissed in pain. Chan, please, not so loud, and I love you too. Naruto told her with a sigh. Naruto, it's your turn. Haruka's voice brought him out from his thoughts. He blinked and looked at Mizuki, who handed him the 5 kunai. When Naruto took them, a scowl formed on his face. Bastard, they're much heavier than normal kunai, and the blade is dull, he just had to use a little more strength. Naruto thought and get in the position. He cast one more look at the smug-looking Mizuki. Naruto sighed and turned toward the target. Haruka signaled to start and Naruto almost instantly threw first 5 kunai, which embedded themselves right in the middle. Mizuki almost choked on his own spit when the dull kunai were embedded nearly to the hilt. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the point between the 4 kunai in the middle. Well, let's see how durable this thing is. Naruto thought and threw the last kunai. Everyone watched in amazement as the kunai hit exactly in the middle of the target and pushed it back nearly few meters before it stopped. Naruto himself hissed and rolled his shoulder. Damn, I missed, that was supposed to went through. When he said that, everyone gawked, except Sasuke, who was seething. That dope did better than me and Uchiha. Sasuke thought angrily. Naruto felt that and looked at his with a smirk. What, jealous? Naruto asked smugly, which only angered Sasuke more, seeing that Haruka stepped between them before it escalated. Alright, calm down everyone, we have sparring matches ahead of us. He said and began to walk toward the further end of the training ground, where a ring for sparring was. Naruto couldn't help but smirk. He knew that Mizuki probably set Sasuke to fight with him in hopes of Naruto's defeat. Will Haruka react when I nearly kill Sasuke? Whatever. Naruto must to himself. Everyone gathered a small distance from the ring. Alright, there will be only Taijutsu, nothing more, nothing less. Mizuki, do your job. Haruka said and stepped back. Mizuki smirked and looked at Naruto. Naruto and Sasuke, step into the ring. Naruto sighed. Knew it. He muttered and stepped into the ring with Sasuke standing across from him with arms crossed on his chest. His fangirls immediately began cheering. Nah, Naruto-kun. Hinata's shy voice cut through the crowd. Naruto turned toward her with raised eyebrow. Yes. Please sit and kill him, don't want you to get in trouble. When she said that, Naruto pouted. No fun, NarutoXBleach, right, I will try to not hurt him too much. Hearing the confidence in Naruto's voice angered Sasuke. You're getting delusional, dope, you can't beat an Uchiha like me. Sasuke said angrily, to which Naruto just looked at him in boredom. Really, princess, go and prove it. Just then Mizuki started the match, and Sasuke immediately darted at Naruto and tried to hit his head with a high kick, but Naruto caught his right foot. Sasuke quickly spun his body despite the pain in his foot and attempted to kick Naruto once again, but he just released his right foot and punched him in the left ankle. Sasuke yelled in pain before he quickly regained his balance and gained some distance from Naruto. He knelt and touched his ankle. See, you can't prove anything, you're just pathetic. At that Sasuke growled and stood up before taking a stance. Naruto sighed and calmly walked up to Sasuke. When Sasuke swung his fist at Naruto, he just caught it and delivered a kick to Sasuke's chin, launching him into the air. Naruto jumped out and performed a front flip above Sasuke before driving his heel into Sasuke's stomach, launching him back down and kicking up a cloud of dust. Sasuke-kun. A shout from few girls sounded just as Sasuke hit the ground. When the cloud cleared, Sasuke was laying on the ground, holding his stomach in pain and trying to sit up but failing miserably. Winner, Naruto. Iruka said with a tiny smile on his face. Naruto nodded and stepped out from the ring. "Get it back, Harry, you bastard," Sasuke said weakly, finally managing to stood up. Naruto sighed and looked at him. "Stay down, as you're now Usagi would kill you with one finger," Naruto said coldly. Sasuke's eyes widened before he scowled and tried to walk toward Naruto, but he tripped and fell down onto the ground. "See, you're pathetic," Naruto said and walked up to his group of friends. "Was it really necessary?" Ino asked with arms crossed across her chest. "It was, with his ego he could easily get himself killed. I just had to beat into him that he's not that strong." At Naruto's words the group nodded. Everyone began to fill out from the academy. Many parents were waiting for their children. Most adults glared at Naruto as he walked out from the academy, but he paid them no mind. He turned his head to his group and smiled. "So, who wants to go and celebrate?" Naruto asked. Ino and Shinji agreed instantly. When Shikamaru tried to get away, Ino grabbed his arm and pulled him back. Hinata looked around and upon spotting a member of Branch family waiting for her, shook her head. "So sorry, I had a training with my father scheduled by Naruto-kun." Naruto just grinned and patted her head. "That's okay, go and do your best." Hinata smiled at that and left. Shino was nowhere to be found, causing Naruto to sigh. And Shino left again. "Well, let's go." With that the group of four left the academy ground and turned left toward their favorite restaurant. "So, Naruto, how Kiba couldn't hit you?" Ino asked suddenly after several seconds of silence. Naruto looked at her and smiled. "Ino, my dear, that's a secret that I'm simply not ready to tell you," Naruto said calmly. Shikamaru, who walked on his right side. "The fox?" At that Naruto tensed slightly and looked at Shikamaru. "What?" Ino asked. Shikamaru just shook his head. It wasn't his thing to tell about Kyuubi. "Naruto is like a fox, mischief is his element, troublesome." When Shikamaru said that, Naruto released a sigh of relief. Before any more could be said, they arrived at the restaurant. They walked inside and immediately everyone looked at them. They sit in a booth while Shinji ordered the food for them all. Ino and Shinji sat on one side with Shinji sitting away from the window. Naruto is sitting across Shinji while Shikamaru sit across from Ino. "So Shika, how long did you know?" Naruto asked silently so that Ino and Shinji didn't heard. Shikamaru sighed and looked at him. "About few months, it really isn't that hard, your Haori is pretty obvious." At that Naruto couldn't help but chuckle. "True, so how are things in your house?" Shikamaru sighed again. "Troublesome as always, my mom is egging me out about finding myself a girlfriend, she also asked when you visit again." Naruto chuckled again. "I don't know when I could be able to visit again, when I get on the team I won't have so much free time." Just then a waitress arrived with their food. She looked at Naruto and winked, an action that didn't went unnoticed by Ino. When the waitress turned around, Naruto lightly slapped her on the rear, earning him a gasp from the waitress, who looked at him and giggled before walking away. "What was that?" Ino asked with anger noticeable in her voice. Naruto looked at her and grinned. "What, a man can flirt around, it's only natural that if females cling to a strong male, though. I don't know what girls see in that Princess Sasuke." At that Ino sighed. "That's not the point, why you don't flirt around with me, or Hinata?" Ino asked, to which Shikamaru facepalmed and sighed. "Ino, age difference and you're not even a genin, Naruto could get in trouble for something like that." A look of realization crossed over Ino's face. Naruto turned to Shikamaru and grinned. "Thanks, Shika," Naruto said. Shinji, who by far was only interested in eating, looked at Naruto. "Naruto, I often see you with Anko, you know, that Takubetsu Jimin." Naruto grinned at that. "Yeah, she's fun to be around, slightly sadistic, but damn, her body is flexible as hell." Ino and Shinji nearly choked on their food while Shikamaru sighed. "Troublesome," Shikamaru muttered under his breath, but Naruto heard it and smirked. "What, I enjoy life as much as I can," Naruto said simply. However, his smirk hadn't disappeared. He then simply began to eat along with the rest. When they were all finished after several minutes, the same waitress from before walked up with a bill. Naruto reached toward his wallet, but the waitress raised her hand. "Don't worry, it's on the house," she said cheerfully with a wink toward Naruto. He grinned and gestured for her to come closer. She obliged, and Naruto slipped something into her hand. The waitress looked inside, and her eyes went wide. In her hand was a rolled up bills. "Naruto-kun, I can't take that," the waitress said and tried to give it back to Naruto, who smiled and closed her hand. "Don't worry, you helped me, I was younger, that's the least I can do to repay you." The waitress just blushed and walked away with a small skip in her step. Well, I should be going, I have to visit Jinii-sama after all. With that said, Naruto stood up and left. The group of three still looked somewhat shocked at what transpired but decided not to ask. July 15 years after Kyuubi's attack. Inside the Hokage office, Jin Ichimaru is by the window overlooking the village. Through this 15 years he hadn't changed much, except the fact that now he has 186 centimeters in height and his eyes are constantly narrowed and he's always smiling. He wears black kimono shirt, dark gray Anbu-styled pants, black strapped-up shinobi sandals and red sash tied around his waist, to which a wakizashi with light blue hilt is tied. However, now he also wears long white haori with kanji for 5th Hokage, along with a customary hat on top of his head. In his right hand is long, lit-up pipe. He took a drag and held the smoke in for few seconds before letting it out. Just then a knock on the door brought him up from his musing. "Enter," Jin said in a cheerful tone. A man with spiky silver hair, dark gray eyes, and a relaxed, heavy-lidded expression entered the office. "Ah, Kakashi-kun, what brought you here?" Jin asked in his constantly cheerful tone. Kakashi tensed slightly at this. He knew that Jin is much more powerful than him, and the feeling in the back of his mind forced him to become especially careful. "Hokage-sama, I wanted to ask if you could let Sasuke Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki on my team. Both of them are exceptionally talented, so I'm sure then they will pass tomorrow," Kakashi said happily while Jin's smile dropped at his words and his eyes opened slightly wider. Kakashi felt his life flash before his eyes. Jin took a drag from his pipe and let out the smoke after few seconds. "Watch your words, hot Aki-san. Sasuke is one thing, but I won't let Naruto into incompetent hands, especially with Kyuubi. From what Naruto told me, she can be quite irritable at times." At that, Kakashi's eyes went wide. "He contacted Kyuubi? When?" he asked as his fists tightened. Jin saw that and his usual visage came back. He sat down in his chair and took another drag from his pipe. "Kyuubi was controlled back then, I had already forgiven her, as did Naruto." Jin let out a chuckle at that. "They are on very good terms actually." Kakashi calmed down slightly and looked at the Hokage with all seriousness. "Then Hokage-sama, what about the reports from people about his behavior?" Kakashi asked. Jin's smile dropped again. "That's their fault, they wanted a demon, and Naruto is more than happy to give them one. He won't take shit from people anymore." At that, Kakashi's eyes widened once more. "Then don't have any loyalty toward the village Edward, what sensei cherished above everything." Jin chuckled at that. "Of course he don't, what were you expecting with people treating him like that? If he holds any loyalty, then it's for me and his friends." Jin took another drag from his pipe. He turned around in his chair and looked through the window. "Be warned, you better make sure to teach Naruto properly or you will get Shinzem into your heart." Kakashi, knowing that Hokage allowed Naruto on his team, bowed and quickly left. Jin chuckled and slightly opened his eyes. This world, it seemed to be so calm right now. We wonder how Ranjiku is doing. He must to himself. Just then another knock sounded from his door, causing Jin to sigh. For funk's sake, a man can't even relax for a second. Jin raged inwardly. He calmed himself and turned toward the door. "Enter," Jin said. The doors opened and Naruto walked in with a scowl on his face. "Nai-sama, do you know that weirdo with silver hair? He was creeping the shit out of me." Jin chuckled and gestured toward the couch by the wall on his right. Naruto nodded his appreciation and sat down. "Yes, I know him. Hot Aki. Kakashi will be your sensei if he prove himself worthy, that is." A smirk appeared on Naruto's face. "Now that's Nai-sama, I know, always planning, never doing something reckless. Lisso, how you threatened him?" Naruto asked. The Anbu hidden in the shadows tensed. Jin chuckled and took a drag from his pipe. "Shinzem to the heart, for those who know what it is, works every damn time." Naruto began to laugh at that. Soon Jin began to chuckle. For Anbu hidden around the room, this sight was beyond terrifying. After several seconds, both of them calmed down and looked at each other. Jin reached inside the desk and pulled out a jug of sake followed by 2 saucers. He set everything on the table and gestured for the chair before his desk. "Come drink with me, Naruto-kun, company is something an old person like me needs." Naruto chuckled at that. "No shit, Nai-sama, drinking with someone is a show of mutual respect, drinking alone is a problem," Naruto said, sitting down on the chair. Jin poured the sake to each saucer and put it down. He looked at Naruto and smirked. "So how good Anko was?" July 16 15 years after Kyuubi's attack, graduation day. Naruto growled as he walked down the streets of Konoha holding his head. Unfortunately, when he get drunk, Kyuubi also get drunk, so she couldn't purge the alcohol from his system. That's why the headache is killing him. "Pichan, are you okay?" Naruto asked weakly, his brain not functioning at full power. Kyuubi let out a long chain of profanities before groaning. A sound similar to something heavy slamming into the brick wall sounded out inside Naruto's head. "Okay, that answers my question," Naruto thought sarcastically, which only earned him a growl. "Funk you," Kyuubi said angrily. Naruto smirked. "Every time," he replied back smugly. Kyuubi just stayed silent. Soon Naruto arrived into the academy and found his classroom. Ignoring the looks he was getting, Naruto walked to his usual seat beside Hinata. Today, however, his seat was already occupied. "Come on, Hinata, forget about this loser and go out with me, what's so great about him anyway?" Naruto growled at this. "Muddy said something before, didn't I? Get away from Hinata," Naruto said coldly. The temperature around him quickly dropped, causing few people near them to shiver. Kiba, upon seeing Naruto quickly get off the chair and ran toward his previous seat in the corner. Just then the temperature returned to normal. "DSK, loser," Naruto muttered under his breath and sat down beside Hinata, who immediately brightened. "Naruto-kun." She greeted him happily. Naruto glanced at her and smiled slightly. "Good morning, Hinata-chan, how was your training?" he asked calmly. Hinata blushed slightly and began to play with her fingers. "Good, father said that I'm making good progress." When she said that, Naruto chuckled. "That's my Hinata, here." He placed a paper bag on the desk in front of her. Hinata took a sniff and her eyes went wide open. Faster than anyone could see, Hinata opened the bag and began munching on the cinnamon roll that was inside. Shikamaru smirked at that. "You're a big softy, Naruto," he said teasingly and lay back down on the desk. Naruto blushed lightly and looked away from everyone. "Shut up," he muttered. Just then Iruka walked inside, but to everyone's surprise Mizuki wasn't there. "Iruka-sensei, where is Mizuki-sensei?" Ino asked. Iruka sighed and shook his head. "Mizuki was executed for treason, that's all I can tell." When he said that, many people gasped. However, Naruto began to grin, showing his slightly pointed teeth. "Anyway, today are the final exams, first will be the writing test." Many people groaned at that. Iruka ignored them, and in a poof of smoke a stack of papers appeared in his hands. He placed the stack on his desk and looked over the students. "We start now." An hour later, everyone waited for Iruka to check the test and tell who the Rookie of the Year will be. "Alright everyone," Iruka said loudly while standing up. He pulled out a piece of paper and smiled. "The Rookie of the Year for boys is it that?" Sasuke smirked at Naruto and stood up. Fangirls were about to shout in excitement when Naruto Uzumaki. At that, everything stopped. Sasuke blinked once, then twice. Finally his confusion was replaced by anger. "What? That clan less dope did better than me and Uchiha," Sasuke shouted. Iruka sighed and looked at him sternly. "Sasuke, sit down, he will not tolerate that attitude in my class." At that, Sasuke growled but decided not to argue. Naruto's little group all cheered for NarutoXHarem, who muttered a quick "nude." Sakura, one of Sasuke's most loyal fangirls, shook in anger. "How dare he, humiliating Sasuke-kun like that, who does he think he is?" she thought angrily. Sasuke's thoughts were very similar. "Such anger radiating in this class, it's making me wet," Kyuubi said inside Naruto's head, which brought a smile to his face. "You know what, Function Dayami, after I get my headband I'm going to visit Urahara-sensei, and I will give him so much of your chakra that he will be finished with your body in no time." Naruto thought. Kyuubi squealed in delight and began shouting "I love you" over and over again. Naruto turned her out and looked at his friends. "It's not a big deal guys, I was just studying instead of brooding all day," Naruto said calmly. Sasuke heard that and just growled. "Now, the Rookie of the Year for girls is Hika Hinata." At that, Sakura was the one to stand up. "What? How is that possible? I should get perfect score for this test." Iruka sighed once more before he sent a glare at Sakura. "Miss Haruno, I won't repeat myself. True, you nearly get a perfect score, 99 points is nearly perfect, but Miss Hinata scored a perfect 100, just deal with it. Besides, there is still one part of the final exam. If by any chance Miss Hinata fail it, then the rookie title goes to you. Now, everyone go outside the classroom, the final test will be done in private." When Iruka said that, everyone walked outside the classroom. After few minutes Iruka opened the door. "Shikamaru Nara," he said simply and walked inside with Shikamaru following behind and closing the door. "It will be a while," Naruto said simply. Everyone from his group nodded. Hinata walked out from the classroom with a smile on her and a headband tied around her neck. Unlike anyone else, however, her headband was different. It has black cloth along with black metal instead of normal one, and the village symbol was gold. Naruto smiled even wider upon seeing her. "Good job Hinata, I knew you could do this," Naruto said and patted her head, causing the girl to blush and began to play with her fingers. "Naruto-kun," Hinata muttered, but soon she closed her eyes and relished in the sensation on her head. A strange yet very cute sound escaped her mouth, causing Naruto to freeze. When Hinata noticed what happened, she covered her mouth and ran off. "Naruto, you're last," Iruka said and walked back inside. When Naruto didn't follow, Iruka looked back and saw shocked Naruto with a blush on his face. "It was so funking adorable," Naruto shouted inside his head. Kyuubi huffed at that. "Do think so too, damn that girl, now I'm getting soft." Kyuubi muttered the last part under her breath. Naruto snapped out from his stupor and shook his head. He walked inside the classroom and saw Iruka sitting behind his desk, smiling at him. Now Naruto, perform a Kawarimi no Jutsu body replacement technique, Henge no Jutsu transformation technique, Bunshin no Jutsu clone technique of any type, and one more jutsu of your choice. Naruto nodded in understanding and disappeared in a poof of smoke, in his place a wooden log fell onto the floor. Is that good enough? Naruto asked from behind Iruka. He nodded and Naruto walked back into the front of Iruka's desk. Good, Kawarimi performed, now Henge. Naruto nodded and performed a series of 3-hand seals. Henge no jutsu. Naruto said calmly and a cloud of smoke enveloped him. The cloud quickly dispersed, and right before Iruka stood Jin Ichimaru in his Hokage robes. Iruka stood up and examined the Henge up close. Nodding in satisfaction, Iruka gave Naruto a thumb up. Naruto once more was enveloped in a cloud and returned back to normal. Naruto crossed index and middle finger of both of his hands. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto said the name of the technique and 5 small clouds of smoke appeared around Naruto. When the smoke cleared, 5 identical copies of Naruto stood there. Iruka blinked few times and looked at Naruto. Naruto, where did you learn the jutsu? Iruka asked. Naruto just shrugged his shoulders. Hokage taught me, my chakra reserves won't let me perform a normal Bunshin, so he taught me something more powerful. Iruka nodded at the explanation and sat back down on his chair. Alright, 3 basic jutsu performed, do you want to end it or you have something to show? He asked. Naruto hummed in thought and nodded. After few seconds, he raised his right hand with his palm facing upward, and after few seconds a spiraling sphere of chakra formed in his hand. Iruka stared at Naruto in shock as he performed a Rasengan. Na-Naruto air rank offensive jutsu, did Hokage taught you that? He asked. Naruto grinned and nodded, dispersing the Rasengan. Of course, who else? Iruka just nodded and handed Naruto the same headband as he gave to Hinata. Naruto's grin became even wider as he tied it to his forehead. Just remember, 3 days from now come to this class for team placement. Thanks Iruka-sensei, goodbye. Naruto said and quickly walked out from the classroom. Iruka just blinked and slumped into his chair. That kid, a perfect rookie of the year. He muttered. Naruto walked through the streets of Konoha with a smirk on his face. The sun will soon hide behind the horizon, yet the streets were still very crowded. Many civilians glared at him, but upon seeing the headband they looked away. It was a clear indication to them Somian was better than Sasuke Uchiha. That was enough for them to not mess with him. I can't wait to finally walk free again, I so want to kill someone. Kyuubi said in an overly excited voice. Naruto's smirk only widened. Yeah, me too. After few more minutes of walking, Naruto arrived at the Hokage tower and immediately went inside. Upon reaching the office, Naruto knocked. Enter, Jin's voice sounded from behind the door. Naruto walked inside and blinked. Standing before the Hokage was Fujinin, Kakashi Hatake, Asuma Sarutobi, Ikki Kurenai and surprisingly Anko Midarashi. But you're here, Naruto-kun, Anko-san here asked for you. When Jin said that, Anko grinned. Hey there hunk, tonight? She asked. Everyone except Jin didn't know what that mean if their confused expressions was any indication. Sorry sweet cheeks, I have something to do outside the village. At Naruto's words, Anko pouted. No fun. She muttered. Jin raised an eyebrow at Naruto. Where do you want to go, Naruto? He asked. Naruto gave him a blank stare. The Karakura, where else? At that, Jin nodded and looked at the pile of scrolls on his right. That reminds me, I have reports about Retsu Unohana, an old friend of mine, being seen in Karakura. I would like you to convince her to go back with you. At that, Naruto raised his eyebrow. Is thought a mission sweet? Every Jonin except Anko stared at Naruto with wide eyes. Jin smiled and handed Naruto the scroll. It's an A rank, so I would send you alone, but Retsu is will scary to say the least. That's why Anko here will go with you. When do you want to go? Naruto grinned at Anko, who returned it. I wanted to go 2 hours from now, is that okay with you, Anko-chan? He asked. Anko give him a thumb up. Sure hunk, just don't be late. With that, Anko walked out from the office. Kakashi cleared his throat and looked at Hokage. Hokage-sama, is that wise, letting Naruto out from the village? He asked. The temperature around the room drastically dropped. Hatake-san, if I didn't know better I would say that you want to keep Naruto inside the village like some sort of animal, but of course you are not so stupid, are you? At that, Kakashi gulped and bowed slightly. I'm sorry, Hokage-sama. As he said that, the temperature returned to normal. See, it wasn't so hard now, was it? Jin said cheerfully and took a drag from his pipe. Naruto looked over the scroll and pocketed it. Well then, Nai-sama, I will be going now. With that said, Naruto walked out. Asuma blinked and looked at Jin. Hokage-sama Anko and Naruto, you know. Jin's smile widened at that. Of course. With that said, Jin lightly opened his eyes. Well then, now for team placement. Naruto sighed as he opened the door to his apartment. True, it wasn't the best place available, but it was slightly above normal. There was only kitchen, bathroom and 1 bedroom, not much, but for Naruto it was enough. After taking off his sandals he turned left and walked inside the kitchen. Kyuubi wanted the apartment to be dark, then that's what it is, the walls and ceiling are painted dark red, while from around waist down the walls are dark purple. That color combination is present in all the rooms. Mahogany panels cover the floor in all apartment except for bathroom. The kitchen was also modern looking with dark themes, the windows were covered by dark red curtains. Naruto walked up to the window in the kitchen and opened the curtains. Pick-chan, just remember, don't get too excited on this trip. After we visit Urahara-sensei we would search for this Retsu Personwo knows, if she's a goodie, then I wouldn't mind making her another of my mates. At that Kyuubi pouted. You're insatiable darling, how many women you will make into your mates? I know you want to make the Hinata girl your mate when she grows up a little, then there's this Anko person, she's very strong and very good in bed. There's also that Ino girl, it seems she likes Yobside that I don't see anyone else worthy. Naruto chuckled at her words. Oh Kik-chan, you know me so well, you, Hinata, Anko and Ino. It's still not enough however, to restore Uzushi Ogakure to its former glory more Uzumakis are needed. Naruto thought with a serious expression. Kyuubi raised her eyebrow before sighing. Naru-kun, go to the bedroom, we should talk face to face. Naruto nodded at that and walked out from the kitchen. He walked into the room on the right from the entrance and looked around. Like the kitchen everything inside the bedroom was dark themed and rather Spartan looking. On the left by the window was a king-sized bed with blood red bedsheet and pillows together with dark purple quilt. Looking right Naruto saw a black dresser by the wall and a small TV in the further corner. Naruto walked up to the dresser and placed his headband on top of it, then he walked up and laid down on the bed. He closed his eyes and relaxed. Naruto opened his eyes and looked at the ceiling similar to his own. He looked to his right and smiled. Laying beside him was a woman of around 168 centimeters in height. She is dark-skinned with silky, bloody red hair reaching to her ankles. She is looking at Naruto with red eyes that has slitted pupils just like Naruto. She wears formal red kimono adorned with white leaf patterns along the bottom. She's also barefooted. Kyuubi traced circles on Naruto's chest with her finger. Her fingernails are painted red. They are also slightly long and sharp like claws. Naru-kun, why is restoring Uzushio so important to you? Kyuubi asked. Naruto looked her in the eyes and smiled sadly. My mother was from there, I know that she wasn't the one to seal you inside me, so I forgave her. I'll read me father however is different matter, he not only caused me great pain, but also imprisoned you, I will correct his mistake. Kyuubi sighed at that. You know I was controlled back then, he didn't have much to say however you're right, he made a mistake, he should just take me away from the village using that technique of his. At that Naruto chuckled and enveloped Kyuubi in a hug. You know, if he did that then I wouldn't meet Yao so let's just forget about him. Kyuubi nodded at his words and snuggled closer to Naruto. You're right as always, now let's just focus on my body and finding that Retsu woman. Naruto grinned at Kyuubi and placed a gentle kiss on her lips. We can always focus on your body right now, I still have some time before leaving. Kyuubi's pupils narrowed at that, she looked at Naruto and licked her lips. It's the best idea you could think of in here. She said seductively and reached her right hand toward Naruto's pants causing him to smirk, however she stopped suddenly and retreated her hand. Nah, let's do this when you get back, I can't distract you from the mission. Naruto pouted at that. You're mean again, I thought you were horny. He asked. Kyuubi chuckled and patted his head. I was, but here both you and me tire out much faster, however when I get my body we can go all out. When she said that Naruto's eyes went wide for a few seconds before he smirked. Oh you sexy fox, so that was your plan. Naruto said and roughly kissed Kyuubi who returned it with equal passion. Anko was walking toward the village gate with a grin on her face. Few days alone with Naruto, I will be limping for sure, but funk that funk. She thought as she arrived at the gate where Naruto was already standing with a smirk on his face. He looked up at Anko, and his smirk widened. Anko-chan, you're here so let's go, faster we get there then we can relax sooner and you know what I mean by relax. At Naruto's words Anko immediately had stars in her eyes, she grabbed Naruto and began to run outside the village. July 16, 15 years after Kyuubi's attack. Naruto and Anko made a considerable distance from the village, they left at 3 hours and moved south toward where Kakura town was. They were chatting at the start of the journey, but when they made some distance from Konoha, and it was very hard to see they set a camp for the night. So Anko, what plan do you have? Naruto asked her, she turned from the campfire and grinned at him. You want to hear the plan? Naruto nodded quickly, the camp they set was placed on a small hill. Anko stood up and turned south, in the large distance away from them she saw lights of the Kakura town, her grin widened when she turned back to Naruto. Public sex Naruto's eyes went wide open at that, he slowly stood up and looked her in the eyes. You know that we can get in trouble for that? He asked, Anko closed her eyes and nodded, still grinning. Yep. She replied. You're just funking with me. Naruto said in disbelief, Anko smirked. Every time. July 17, 15 years after Kyuubi's attack Kakura town. Kakura town, much bigger and more populated than Konoha, a peaceful town. Naruto and Anko walked down the street while looking around. They arrived here around an hour ago, and they still couldn't find Urahara's shop. Finally Naruto snapped. "Oh come on, how hard it can be to find one shop." Naruto shouted while pulling on his hair. Anko sighed and looked at Naruto. "Look, I know it's frustrating but Naruto," Anko began, but blinked as she looked at his face. "That thing on your head is glowing." Just like she said, the headpiece Naruto is using to hold his hair in place is glowing in a bright blue, while the kanji on it glows bright red. Naruto tensed and his eyes went wide open. "Anko, stay here," Naruto said and blurred out from her sight faster than Anko could notice. She blinked and looked at the place he stood before. "It wasn't Shunshin," she said in amazement, then an inhuman roar grabbed her attention. She looked around and noticed that people heard that too. Without any hesitation she went to investigate. Naruto flickered from roof to roof as he moved toward the source of Reiatsu he felt. He jumped off from the roof and drew his sword with his right hand. In the clearing right before him, several creatures with white masks gathered around a very tall man of around 215 centimeters in height with a thin and lanky body. His face is set in a huge smile which reveals his upper teeth. His black hair hangs past his shoulders, concealing the left side of his face and a large wide eye patch with one exposed dark gray eye. His clothing consists of a jacket with an overblown spoon-like hood and an opening starting at the neckline, showing most of his midsection, and closing at his waist. He wears the hakama, but the ends of his pant legs close inside extended and curved boots. What intrigued Naruto however was the weapon in his right hand. It takes the form of a giant axe-like weapon, bearing two crescent moon-shaped blades fused together at the backs, with a large loop chain connected to the shaft at the end of the handle. The chain is connected to the man's waist. The man placed his hand on the ground and after few seconds looked up at Naruto. The man stood up and rested his weapon on his shoulder. "You there, you seem to be a strong opponent, why don't we fight?" The man shouted at Naruto who frowned and jumped down before the man and the creatures. "The Narankari thought your kind died out?" Naruto asked, his face turned into a scowl. "You can say that, kill him." As the man said that the creatures lunged at Naruto, he took the stance and rushed at the creatures, slicing the closest to him with easy. Limit of the thousands hands, respectful hands, unable to touch the darkness. Shooting hands unable to reflect the blue sky. Naruto muttered as he began to cut the creatures. One of the bigger ones tried to slam its fist at Naruto, but he flickered out from that place and slashed it vertically through the middle, killing it. The road that basks in light, the wind that ignited the embers, time that gathers when both are together, there is no need to be hesitant, obey my orders. Naruto flickered and appeared above a massive turtle-like creature. He slammed his sword through its head and jumped away. The creature started to turn into black particles. Naruto turned and performed a heel kick on the creature behind him, shattering its mask. Like bullets, 8 bodies, 9 items, Book of Heaven, Disease Treasure, Great Wheel, Grey Fortress Tower. Aim far away, scatter brightly and cleanly when fired. Naruto finished the incantation as he appeared some distance away from the group of creatures. He pointed his left hand at them and his eyes narrowed. Pad number 91. Senj Contentane Way of Destruction number 91. Thousand Hand Bright Heaven Culling Seer, Naruto shouted. 10 pink energy points appeared around Naruto and fired at the group. The energy collided with the group and created a devastating explosion of pink energy that teared the ground few meters from the explosion. Naruto then turned toward the man with a scowl on his face. "What's your name, punk?" "Maya's Noitra Gilga," Noitra said with a wide smile on his face. Naruto pointed his sword at the man. "Uzumaki Naruto, did you bring hollows to this town?" Naruto asked. The man's smile only grew wider which infuriated Naruto. "For fun, why else?" The man shouted and rushed at Naruto with Naruto doing the same. They clashed their respective weapons, but Naruto was quickly being overpowered. Naruto narrowed his eyes and an orange energy started to appear around his body. It seemed to only excite Noitra even more. "A Shinigami, you're a funking Shinigami. I knew you would be fun." Noitra shouted and began to press onto Naruto even more. Naruto cursed and jumped away from Noitra. When the weapon passed him, Naruto rushed back at Noitra and swung at his chest only for his sword to grind on his skin like a steel. Naruto's eyes went wide from shock and Noitra used this moment to backhand Naruto. He flew away and rolled on the ground few times before stopping and quickly standing up. Naruto looked forward and quickly jumped back as Noitra's weapon slammed into the ground where he stood before. Naruto narrowed his eyes and rushed at Noitra, who still had that infuriating smile on his face. Naruto slickered and appeared inside Noitra's guard, shocking him slightly. Naruto gripped his sword tightly with both hands and with a roar slashed upward at Noitra. Like before, the slash didn't do much except grinding on Noitra's skin, but when Naruto's blade reached Noitra's chin, it launched him few meters into the air, shocking him even more. "That punk how?" Noitra asked himself as he flew up. Naruto pointed his left hand at him. "Pad number 4. by Akurai Way of Destruction number 4. Pale lightning, Naruto shouted and a huge bolt of lightning shot at Neutra. Before Neutra could react, the lightning slammed into his and caused an explosion. After few seconds, Neutra fell down from the smoke and slammed into the ground. Anko just arrived on the scene but decided to watch. For several seconds nothing happened and Naruto sighed in relief. He was about to sheath his sword when Kyuubi's voice caught his attention. "Naruto, look out," she shouted. Naruto drew back his sword and watched as yellow energy enveloped Neutra. "Inner Santa Teresa pray. Praying mantis," Neutra shouted and a pillar of yellow energy shot up into the air, completely covering Neutra and creating a small shockwave. Sensing the trouble, Naruto grabbed his sword with both hands and held it in front of himself. Orange energy began to emanate around him. "Kai to Binretsu. Rage Nojk by collapse and divide. 10 tails of lightning beast," Naruto shouted. A pillar of orange energy covered him completely. Anko felt the power the two began emanating and became scared. "What the hell, that power, it's around Kage level," Anko thought. The pillar of energy covering Neutra disappeared. He stood there without any scratch on him. He gained an extra set of arms, which took on an insect-like carapace and clawed hands, with each hand holding a large scythe-like weapon as well. The scythes themselves resemble the appendages of a praying mantis and have a small golden tassel at the end of each staff. He also gains a golden marking extending from his forehead to below his right eye, as well as a pair of horns on his head resembling a crescent moon, with his left horn longer than his right. He gained several white tendril-like appendages around his torso which extend over the sides of his abdomen. A maniacal smile stretched his lips. Just then Naruto's pillar of energy also disappeared. Naruto stood there slightly battered, but what changed was his weapon. Instead of Mdachi in his right hand, is a double-edged broadsword with a flat top, making it impossible to stab something. The handle of this sword is wrapped in black bandages and has a white tassel attached to the base of the hilt. The tassel takes form of 10 bone-like segmented tails, each ending with a ring in which a tiny blue orb is embedded. The blade is completely black, and in the middle of the blade near the top is a small hole to which a short red rosary-like cord is attached. Hanging from the cord is a red paper talisman with strange black markings on it. Naruto rested the blade on his shoulder with easy, shocking Anko. "The hell, that sword is as big as him, how can he wield it so easily?" Anko asked herself. Neutra looked at Naruto, and his smile widened to humanly impossible size. "Let's fight to death, shall we?" Neutra shouted and rushed at Naruto, who just stood there. He pointed his sword at Neutra and sighed. "Joha." Dividing blade, Naruto said calmly. The talisman began to glow in a bright red color. That glow quickly spread through the entire blade, leaving out the hilt. When Neutra swung his scythes at Naruto, he lazily swung his sword at Neutra, who grinned. To his surprise, however, Naruto's sword passed through his arms and scythes. Naruto flickered behind Neutra. "What?" Neutra said aloud. After few seconds, Neutra's scythes broke in pieces. His forearms from the elbows down soon followed, falling to the ground. Each place that Naruto slashed at had a red glow on it. Neutra looked at the stumps of his arms for few seconds before looking back at Naruto. Naruto swung his sword across Neutra's abdomen. It passed right through him without any resistance. "You loosened, now you're dead." When Naruto said that, a bright crimson line appeared where Naruto slashed. After few seconds, Neutra's torso separated from the rest of his body and fall down onto the ground. Naruto's sword turned back to normal, and he immediately began to feel the strain on his body, causing him to fall down beside Neutra. "Damn, you were strong like a monster," Naruto said weakly. Neutra looked at Naruto, fighting off the sleepiness. "How? You couldn't even scratch me before, what are you?" Naruto chuckled at the question. "My Zanpakuton reflects my will to move forward despite any obstacles. I just cut down the obstacle. It's the power of my sword, no matter how strong the defense can cut through it without any problem." Naruto finished his explanation with a groan. Neutra laughed slightly at that. "I see you just had a bad luck to fight Yaofink's kid, that was awesome." With that, Neutra grew an additional right hand and placed it on Naruto's head. The yellow energy gathered around Neutra's palm before sinking into Naruto, enveloping in a yellow glow that soon began to turn orange. After several seconds, Neutra took his head away from Naruto and smiled. "Take my energy, won't need it anymore, and you could use it for your goals also, and you get to Mego to Uzushihaga career, what's left of it." Neutra began coughing after he finished speaking. Naruto turned toward him and smirked. "You won't live long, you bastardy, cut through your kidneys and most vital organs, just accept it and die already." Neutra smirked slightly at that. "At least I died in a fight." With that, Neutra closed his eyes and released his last breath. Naruto cursed slightly as his sight began to blur. "That's why I don't use my SHIKAI initial release, so Muchi will feel it later on," Naruto said to himself and closed his eyes. Anko finally walked out into the clearing and ran up to Naruto. She looked around and noticed the destruction that happened from the fight. "Oh shit, better get going," Anko said to herself and picked up Naruto. However, before she could go away from the clearing, she felt two people behind her. "Put the boy down or die." one of the people said. Anko turned around and saw two girls behind her, she couldn't help but raise an eyebrow in interest. Both of them were slightly shorter than Naruto and appeared to be twins, the two of them are almost identical in appearance. However, one has short red hair, while the other has longer blue hair which is parted in pigtails. On their heads they have masks that act as some kind of headband, both of which go vertically down the middle of their heads before reaching their eyebrows. The masks also act as a sheath for their weapons, sitting behind their head horizontally. They both wear the same outfit, which is a sleeveless white jacket, elbow-length gloves, white bracelets on each wrist, sock-like stockings, black high-heeled boots and short schoolgirl-themed skirts. Of this, the skirt, stockings and gloves are colored to represent their respective hair color. "Who are you? What do you want from Naruto?" Anko asked with a growl. The red-haired girl narrowed her and reached for the hilt on the back of her mask. She grabbed it and pulled out. A sword coated in flames appeared from the hilt at which Anko gulped. The redhead pointed the sword at Anko. "My name is Yang and this is my sister Yin, is what we heard before true?" "That boy's name is Naruto Uzumaki." The girl asked. Anko tensed slightly and pulled out a kunai from the sleeve of her coat. "And what if he is?" Anko asked angrily. Yang raised her eyebrows. "Depending on your answer we will let you live," Yang said calmly. Yin sighed and looked at Anko with an apathetic expression. "He is anything else?" Anko asked. Her senses are screaming at her to run, but she ignored them. Yin nodded slightly before turning to her sister. "He's in Uzumaki, I can feel it, let's go, we're done here." Yin spoke calmly and began to walk away. Yang sighed and sheathed the sword. "One more question?" Yang asked. Anko relaxed slightly and nodded. "Sure." Yang looked at Naruto sleeping on Anko's shoulder. "Who his parents are, I sense powers similar to our own inside of him." At that question Anko blinked. She looked at Naruto on her shoulder for few seconds before looking at Yang. Yin was standing few meters from them with her back turned toward them. "He don't talk about his father, however he said few times that his mother was Kushina Uzumaki." At that both Yang and Yin looked at Naruto with wide eyes. "Was?" Yin asked. Anko nodded with a sad smile on her face. "His parents died 15 years ago." Yin nodded and grabbed her sister's arm. "Let's go Nichain, our job is done." Yang nodded. With that the both girls disappeared with a sound of statics. Anko breathed out a sigh of relief and looked around. "Well then, what now?" she said to herself and walked away from the clearing toward the more populated part of town. July 17, 15 years after Kyuubi's attack Konoha. Jin was relaxing in his chair as always after finishing with the paperwork. He couldn't help but chuckle at the way Naruto come up with to deal with the paperwork shadow clones. It allowed Jin to relax during the day. "Hokage-sama." A calm voice reached his ears. Jin looked at the door and took a drag from his pipe. Standing in the doorway was a woman of around 161 centimeters in height. She's pale-skinned with bright green eyes, thin black hair tied in small ribbons by the side of her face, with the back cut short lustrous lips and surprisingly slender body. She wears black sleeveless shirt with a high collar, black skin-tight pants, white leather belt around her waist, to which a silver 5-pointed cross pendant is attached, as well as black boots that sport a small heel to give her a few extra inches. On top of this she wears a white hooded coat that reaches down around her knees. The coat also have long sleeves that covers her hands. She also wears a pair of half-rimmed glasses with oval-shaped lenses and a black scarf around her neck with white 5-pointed cross on both ends. "I think I remember you from somewhere," Jin said with raised eyebrow. The woman nodded and a tiny smile graced her lips. "Yes, I'm Lisbeth Goldenrod, the librarian in Konoha's librarian, also Naruto's friend," the woman said meekly. Jin raised his eyebrow at her. "Friend? Not more?" he asked. The woman blushed slightly before looking around. "I know about Naruto's more colorful than normal sexual life, I'm in fact one of his partners." At that Jin chuckled. "I see, well then, why did you came here? Whatever it is then it must be very important if you came here." Lisbeth nodded and took a deep breath to calm herself. "I wanted to ask you about Naruto, I didn't saw him in the village since yesterday and I wanted to talk to him about something important." At that Jin's eyes opened slightly, he took a drag from his pipe and grinned slightly. "You're not pregnant, are you?" Jin asked, to which Lisbeth blushed madly and crossed her arms under her D-cup beep. She began to shuffle her right foot nervously. "Naruto always use protection, he told me that he will not risk his child going through the same treatment as he did. He just came to ask where he is and when he will come back." Jin nodded and took another drag from his pipe. "He went to Kakura town for personal business, he should get back to Konoha in 2 to 3 days without any delay," Jin said with his ever-present smile back in place. Lisbeth nodded and turned to leave when Jin stopped her. "Lisbeth-san, if you love him just tell him, he will be overjoyed." Lisbeth blushed and nodded. She quickly walked out from the office. When she left, Jin sported a shit-eating grin. "What a beast, yet another woman fall in love with him," Jin said to himself and took another drag from his pipe. After few seconds he released a thin stream of smoke from his mouth. Let's see, from what Naruto told me Kyuubi wants to have his kid strange woman. I pray for the soul of one stupid enough to go near her children with malicious intent. There is also Hinata Hika and Ino Yamanaka. From what I heard both girls have feelings for him. There are also several civilian women, but Naruto is only using them for his goals, so it's not important. Gin thought as he took another drag from his pipe, his eyes have a faraway look. There is Anka sure if it's just sex or something more, however knowing Naruto she could easily fall in love if he so wanted and now there's this Lisbeth woman a quince interesting. Jin thought and looked at the clock hanging from the wall. Well then, I should go home now. He said as he stood up and began to walk from the office. Thank you very much. Lisbeth said as she walked out from the bakery near her place. Surprisingly she lives in the same apartment complex as Naruto, so she often visits him. As she walked she couldn't help but blush as she recalled the conversation with Hokage. Naruto's child, she thought with a gentle smile on her face, however that smile soon faded when she looked around the villagers. It's their fault Naruto hate this place so much, if only something could wipe them out. She thought with a scowl, the scowl only deepened when she felt several pairs of eyes on her, they weren't civilians for sure. Lisbeth sighed and turned into an alleyway. After walking for a few more seconds she stopped, a paper bag in her right hand, while her left hung limply at her side. Several figures landed behind, and before her, each had an Anbu mask on their faces. Lisbeth looked at them coldly. You will come with us. One of them, apparently male, said without a hint of emotion in his voice. And if I refused? Lisbeth asked, her tone not changing even for a second. The Anbu slowly reached for their tanto. I think you don't have a choice. The one from before said. Lisbeth only sighed. So that fossil wants to ensure Naruto-kun's loyalty by holding me captive as much as a vision of Naruto reaping through root members just to reach me is interesting, he must refuse. As she finished speaking from the left sleeve of her coat a silver handle without blades slid out, Lisbeth effortlessly caught it and a blade of bright blue energy appeared. Well then, let's dance. Lisbeth said coldly as Anbu rushed at her with their blades in hands. Few minutes later Lisbeth was happily munching on a strawberry bun, not even a cut or drop of blood on her or her clothes. A slightly drunk man stumbled into the alley Lisbeth walked out with. Few seconds later the same man began to scream his throat out. July 17, 15 years after Kyuubi's attack Kakura town. Naruto groaned as he opened his eyes. Looking around he saw the familiar ceiling of Urahara's shop. He looked to his left and saw his Haori neatly folded down and his Zanpakuto on top of it. Good morning Naruto-kun. A sickly sweet voice said from his right. Naruto tensed slightly as he looked in the direction of the voice. Sitting there in a cross-legged position is Anko with arms crossed over her chest and a disturbingly wide smile on her face. However Naruto couldn't complain much as he had a clear view beneath her skirt. If you're wondering how we get here I will explain. When you finished his fight with that guy I took you into the town to find a place where we could rest, then that with man with mustache saw us and took us here, then that Urahara guy explained everything about what happened, about Shinigami, Hollow, Arankor, Quincy, about everything. I waited 2 hours before you woke up just to teach you about holding a secret from me. Anko said with a disturbingly sweet voice. Naruto only gulped. Several minutes later Naruto walked out from the room dressed in his Haori and his sword in place. He walked down the corridor toward the entrance and opened the first door to the left. Walking inside he saw a tatami-covered floor with a round low table in the middle. Sitting on the floor by the table was a man of around 183 centimeters in height with lean build, light skin and gray eyes. His hair is messy and light blonde, almost pale, with strands framing the sides of the face and hanging between his eyes, and he has chin stubble. He wears a dark coat, which sports a white diamond pattern along its bottom half, with a dark green shirt and pants underneath. The man has a small paper fan in hand that he covers his face with. He also wears traditional Japanese wooden sandals and a striped dark green and white bucket hat. Urahara-sensei, good evening. Naruto said while looking at the clock hanging from the wall which shows 7 p.m. The man smiled behind the fan. Welcome Naruto-kun, to what do I owe the pleasure of your visit? Urahara asked. Naruto just looked at him blankly, to which Urahara sighed. Stubborn as always, let's go to the basement. With that said Urahara stood up and walked out from the room with Naruto following right behind without a word. They walked toward the back of the shop where Urahara opened a shaft and walked down the hidden stairs. After few seconds they arrived at an enormous room with rock terrain and walls, along with ceiling painted to resemble the sky. They walked to the bottom of the stairs, where Urahara reached toward the storage seal on his left hand, from which he unsealed a white coffin with a transparent lid. He placed the coffin on the ground, letting Naruto take a good look. When he did Naruto's eyes went wide open. Inside the coffin was a perfect replica of Kyuubi's body, but unlike the Kyuubi in Naruto's mind, she wears simple white yukata. I must say that the Kenjutsu of this world is amazing. Combined with Kidm, I was able to create a seal on this Gigai that will absorb the nearby Reishi in small amounts and convert it into chakra using Kikbi's chakra as an example. As we can only channel the Kikbi soul with only a tiny bit of chakra, it will help her restore her energy faster without risking any damage to environment. As Urahara explained, Naruto stared at the body with a soft smile. After few seconds he looked at Urahara. "Now what?" he asked. Urahara smiled slightly. "Just place your hands on Kikbi's body and channel some of her chakra, she should be able to transfer her soul to the new body without hurting you." Naruto nodded and opened the lid. He placed both of his hands on the Gigai's abdomen and closed his eyes. "You ready, Kik-chan?" Naruto asked in his thoughts. Kikbi nodded with a wide smile on her face. "Let's do this, Naruto-kun," she said, causing Naruto to chuckle. He began to channel the Kikbi's chakra into her new body, and Kikbi moved with the flow of her chakra, forcing her soul into the new container. Back in Konoha, one Hiruzen Sarutobi was an elder man who recently retired as a Hokage to spend rest of his life in peace. That peace, however, was broken as looked in shock at the glass orb at his side. He was currently sitting at the porch of his house when the orb began to glow and showed an image that shocked him. It showed Naruto as he knelt in front of a red-haired woman in a coffin. His attention, however, was more focused on the red chakra flowing into the seemingly dead body. After watching for several seconds, his eyes went wide open as the woman's eyes fluttered open, revealing red eyes that had slitted pupils. The woman quickly stood up and hugged Naruto before kissing him. However, then the woman stood up and stretched. Hiruzen's eyes nearly popped out from their sockets when 9 orange fox tails shot out from the woman's waist. "Kentucky Kikbi!" Hiruzen shouted in shock. After few more seconds, the image inside the orb vanished, which caused Hiruzen to frown. There was some type of barrier. The chakra used in the trigger seal was containing more than half of my overall reserves, so the barrier must be powerful to break contact so quickly. He mused to himself as he stood up. He quickly left his house and walked toward the Hokage office. Kikbi stretched some more, showing her slender body to Naruto, who was grinning. Finally, Kikbi stopped stretching and looked at Urahara coldly, which caused him to flinch. After all, even if Kikbi wasn't at her peak right now, she could easily wipe the floor with him. "I hope you made this body fertile. After all, I plan on having Naruto's kid sometime in near future." When she said that, Urahara nodded quickly. "Of course, however, for now it's rather unadvised for you to have a sexual intercourse. Your body must adapt to the movement after all." Kikbi nodded and looked at Naruto, who was glancing at her with eyes full of love and lust. She blushed slightly as his gaze traveled over her body. "Naruto-kun, wasn't there something else you came here for?" Kikbi asked. Naruto shook his head quickly and looked at Urahara. "Kurumi is right, we also came looking for someone." Both Urahara and Kikbi raised an eyebrow at him. Kurumi?" Both said in confusion. Naruto blushed slightly and began to scratch the back of his head. "Well, I can't go around calling you Kikbi, so I came up with something else. Also, Kikbi is more like a title than a name." A look of realization crossed over Kurumi's face as he said that. She nodded and grinned at Naruto. "Kurumi, like the sound of that?" Kurumi said and looked down at her clothes. She sighed and snapped her fingers. Flames covered her body, and when they died down, Kurumi had the same red kimono as in Naruto's mind. She looked at Naruto once more. He quickly nodded and looked at Urahara. "Urahara-sensei, I'm searching for a woman called Retsu Anohana, you know something about her?" As he said that, Urahara went sickly pale. Even his fan couldn't hide that. "Naruto-kun, are you searching for her?" he asked with a lightly stutter. Naruto rose an eyebrow at that, but continued anyway. "Nai-sama wanted her back in Konoha for something, do you know why?" At Naruto's question, Urahara gulped and nodded. "Anohana-san is a medical specialized Shinigami right now, at least was also famous as Yuichiro Kenpachi." At that, Naruto's eyes went wide and he became as pale as Urahara. "The Kenpachi, are you sure?" Naruto asked with panic clear in his voice. Urahara gulped once more and nodded. Kurumi was watching everything with an amused expression. "Certainly, however that was long ago, she was tired of bloodshed, so she became a medic rivaling Tsunade Senju. In fact, she's here right now, resting in one of the room before moving somewhere else." Naruto nodded at that and slowly stood up from the ground. He looked at Kurumi and smiled. "Let's go, Kurumi-chan, we must talk to that Retsu woman and go back to Konoha." Kurumi nodded at that, and the three of them walked out from the underground training room. When they arrived back to the ground level, Naruto gathered Anko, who was limping slightly. She knew about Kikbi and her relationship with Naruto, however coming face to face with a being that nearly destroyed Konoha was still terrifying. "So you were Kikbi?" Anko asked carefully, to which Kurumi nodded. She hid her tails after coming back up. "Exactly, however I would appreciate if you call me Kurumi." Anko nodded quickly. The group of four arrived at the room near the entrance and walked inside. Standing there while looking through the window was a woman of around 159 centimeters in height with slender body, blue eyes and black long hair, worn as a large braid down the front of her body. She wears black kimono with a white haori over it and a white obi around her waist. She turned toward the group with a gentle look on her face. She was a Kenpachi. She don't look like Han and she's kinda hot, Naruto thought. He cleared his throat and stepped forward carefully. You're on a Hanaretsu, right? Naruto asked. Retsu smiled at him. Depending on who's asking. She asked as she turned fully toward Naruto. He quickly looked her over. Damn, she's hot, he whispered to himself. Retsu however heard him and chuckled. Flatterer. She said simply. Naruto smiled lightly and shook his head. Anyway, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. I was asked by Jinichimaru, current Hokage, to bring you to Konoha. At first I wanted to use force if necessary, but I have a feeling it won't work on you, that's why I have to ask and you go back with me to Konoha. Naruto said. A slightly frown appeared on his face when he said Konoha. Retsu hummed in thought and looked the group over. When her eyes landed on Naruto she looked incredibly focused. After several long seconds of silence she nodded. Alright, I will go, after all I have nothing better to do. At that Naruto released a sigh of relief. He was about to say something more when a male voice interrupted him. Urahara-senpai. What is going on, why are we still alive? Urahara winced at the person the voice belonged to. So I was right, Minato set a contract with the Shinigami so that their souls could be released when Kyuubi left the seal, which would be upon Naruto's death under normal circumstances. Urahara thought and turned toward Minato. He was looking just as the day he died. The same can be said about Kushina, who was standing beside Minato. Naruto looked around and his eyes became wide open from shock. Hokage-chan? He asked. Kushina looked at Naruto and gasped. Naru-chan, is that you? Kushina asked and stepped forward. Kurumi observed everything in interest. Okay, it's not so bad. I know Naruto loves his mother, but if that bastard Minato say something, Kurumi thought and shivered slightly. It can easily go bad if that, I'm sure. Kurumi watched as Naruto tried to contain his emotions. He took a step forward. Oh god, you grow up so much. Kushina said and hugged Naruto. He at first was slightly shocked, but after several seconds he returned the hug. Mom, Naruto whispered and buried his face in her shoulder, which brought a smile to Kushina's face. She began to caress the back of his head. Naru-chan, it's okay now, I'm right here. Naruto only nodded weakly. Minato smiled upon seeing this and opened his mouth to speak. Kurumi's eyes went wide open from shock. Oh shit. She thought in fear. Yo, Naruto, don't forget about your father. Minato said cheerfully. Urahara and Kurumi facepalmed. May we didn't you shut up. Urahara said with a sigh. The cheerful atmosphere inside the room vanished immediately as the temperature dropped drastically. Naruto pulled out from the hug and showed his cold red eyes to everyone. He stepped closer to Minato. He nearly forget about ya bastard. As he finished speaking, Naruto disappeared for a second before appearing in front of Minato and slammed his fist right in his face. The force behind the punch launched Minato back through the thin wall of the opposite room, where he slammed into the outer wall and stopped. Naru-chan, stop right now. Kushina shouted, but it fell on deaf ears as Naruto approached his father. Urahara stepped in front of Naruto to stop him, but Naruto quickly incapacitated him with a kunai to his leg. The next person that tried to stop him was Kurumi, however Naruto didn't even acknowledge her as he slammed his fist into her stomach, knocking the wind out of her. She fell down onto the floor holding her stomach. Naruto reached Minato again and beeped his fist back. He was about to hit him once more, but a hand caught his wrist. I think it's enough, look what you've done. The one to stop the attack was Retsu. She gave Naruto a scolding look. Naruto's eyes turned blue again as a realization hit him. Kurumi. He shouted and appeared beside Kurumi in an instant. He quickly knelt down and helped her up. Kurumi, are you okay? He shouted in fright as Kurumi looked up at him with a gentle smile. It's okay, Naru-kun, I'm fine. She said as she stood up. Naruto looked at her for a few more seconds before sighing. Alright, let's just go. He said and stood up along with Kurumi. Without any other word he walked out. Kurumi sent a glare at Minato before following Naruto. He stepped out before the shop and took a deep breath to calm himself. He reached into his haori and pulled out a tanto with black blade and hilt. The hilt is covered in several seals. Naru-kun, is everything alright? Kurumi asked. Naruto looked back at her and smiled. I'm fine, I was just slightly surprised is all. I know Urahara can do pretty crazy stuff, so why not resurrect people? He said with a shrug of his shoulders. He began to walk away from Urahara's shop and walked into an alley some distance away. Kurumi was even more confused by his behavior when he looked around and jumped to the roof. She quickly followed him with some troubles which Naruto noticed. He stopped and faster than she could react Naruto swooped her off her feet and lifted her up into his arms. Kurumi smiled at him. So, Naru-kun, what are you doing? She asked. Naruto smiled and began to look around for something. I wanted to place a beacon for a dark field, I don't want anyone to notice it. As he finished speaking Naruto placed Kurumi down and stabbed the tanto from before into the concrete, the blade slid into the roof until only the hilt remained. Naruto stood up and looked around. Anko should find us soon, I just hope that she won't take Kasen or that bastard with her. As he said, the Kurumi looked at him with raised eyebrow. I thought you love your mother? Naruto nodded quickly. Yes, she gave birth to me, but that bastard will surely go with her and the other way around. Kurumi let out a quick oh and looked at her feet. You know, come to think of it now I'm free so we should use protection, after all I really don't want to give birth in that village. Naruto's eyes went slightly wider before he nodded. Yeah, and knowing you it will be a serious strain to my account. Kurumi grinned at the comment. Seconds later Anko arrived with Retsu right behind, however Naruto frowned slightly when he saw Kushina and Minato. Okay, Nai-sama will need a good cover-up story for this one. Naruto muttered to himself and hovered his hand above the tanto. Minato was about to ask what he was doing, but a glare from Kurumi stopped him. And Shia. Naruto said quietly. In a span of few seconds a black mist erupted from the hilt and formed a circle under their feet, then a pillar of mist shoot up, and the mist thinned out after a moment. The group was nowhere in sight, and only the tanto was left, its hilt sucking the light around it. What is the meaning of this, Jin? Hiruzen shouted as he walked inside Jin's office. The Hokage as always was smoking. He took a slow drag from his pipe and let out the smoke after few seconds. What do you mean? Jin asked, feigning innocence. Hiruzen growled before he slammed his hands on top of the desk. The Kyuubi, Naruto gave it a body to move around in. At that Jin sighed. Nodded, old man, Kyuubi is a female. Hiruzen only shook his head. It's not important, as soon as they get back I'm sealing her again. When Hiruzen said that Jin's smile disappeared, he leaned forward in his chair and slightly opened his eyes. Watch your tongue, I knew about your dealing with Dansm, I killed him yesterday. At that Hiruzen paled for a second before an angry scowl appeared on his face. Do you think I will fear you? Dansm was a paranoid fool, sooner or later someone would get a lucky shot at killing him. Jin only smirked cruelly. Oh, about that, he have plenty of time to prepare as I walked through his base and slaughtered his people, in the end even this Sharingan couldn't help him. Jin said and took a step toward Hiruzen, however he couldn't get any closer because a pillar of black mist appeared inside his office which caused him to grin. The mist quickly cleared revealing Naruto and the rest. Jin's grin however quickly turned into a cold visage as he saw Minato and Kushina. I knew that bastard Urahara planned something, good to see you again Kamae, Kushina-chan. He said somewhat coldly and looked at Naruto who was staring intently at the door. You can go Naruto, I see that you're not in the mood for talking. With that Naruto nodded and walked out quickly followed by Kurumi. Minato blinked few times upon looking at Jin. Jin-senpai. You're the Hokage? Minato asked, but Jin ignored him. Retsu-san, good to see you again. Jin said with a grin spreading at his face. Retsu lightly shook her head and looked at the door. If it's not a problem for you, everything happened so fast that I still don't know what's going on. Jin nodded and gestured toward the chair in front of his desk. It will take a while, and you Sarutobi, go home till my patience is good. July 17, 15 years after Kyuubi's attack on Hagakure. Chiza, what a loud scream from Kushina sounded through the village from the inside of Hokage's office. Everyone in the village heard that, but they shrugged and blamed it on someone from Haruno family. Inside Hokage's office Jin sighed and looked at Kushina with a glare. Is that a problem? He asked coldly. Kushina growled in anger as she baled her fists. Problem, I just learned that not only my son was abused by this village, but he also sleeps with several women. Kyuubi included. How could I have no problem with this? Retsu and Jin sighed at that. Jin took a drag from his pipe before he realized it was empty. He dumped what left inside the pipe into an ashtray and quickly refilled it before he lit it up again and took a deep drag. It's what this village did to him. He searched for acceptance where he could be, so Kyuubi was the one to save him. At that the shinobi gathered inside the room looked shocked to the Korean except Kushina who glared at him. Explain. She said coldly. Jin sighed once more and shook his head. Alright, it all happened around 4 years ago, after a certain event that I really don't want to talk about. Naruto tried to kill himself. That earned several gasps, but Jin only took a drag from his pipe and shook his head sadly. Kyuubi was the one to save him, she believed in him, showed him what love was. It's only because of her that Naruto is still with us. However, around the same time Naruto began to openly resent the village. When someone once started a fight with him he said one sentence, if you want a demon you will get it, and then this village will be no more. Minato paled upon hearing that. He glanced at the door and was about to go find Naruto, but something very sharp touched his neck, drawing some blood. Everyone looked at Jin in shock as his sword extended to Minato's neck. Hold right there Kamae, it's better if you don't talk to Naruto. Jin said calmly. Minato opened his mouth to speak, but a glare from Jin stopped him. Right now only Kushina-chan has any chance at talking with him. He said and looked at Kushina with a smile. He loves you Kushina, as it wasn't your idea to seal the Kyuubi inside him, however he is slightly angry that you just locked Kyuubi up and didn't talk to her, maybe then you would have noticed that she was controlled. Kushina nodded weakly as few tears rolled down her cheeks. Naruto opened the door to his apartment with a sigh. He walked inside with Kurumi right behind him. He took off his sandals and walked inside his bedroom. He flopped face first onto the bed. Kurumi sighed as she lay down next to him and wrapped her tails around them, pulling them closer to each other. Naruto sighed in content as he turned his body toward her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "What would I do without you, Kurumi?" he said and kissed her lightly onto her lips. Kurumi moaned slightly into the kiss and wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him closer. Their makeout session began to get even more heated as lust began to cloud their minds. They stopped kissing Gore just a second and they gazed into each other's eyes. "Kurumi, I love you," he said almost breathlessly and began to once more ravish her lips. Kurumi's eyelids slowly closed as yet another moan escaped through her lips. "I know Narukuni love you too," she thought happily as Naruto's left hand slid between her legs. Few minutes later shouts of pleasure could be heard from Naruto's place. July 1915 years after Kyuubi's attack on Hagakure. Naruto walked to the academy with a grin on his face. He didn't saw any of his parents for few days, which was good. He wouldn't know how to react. He also didn't heard about them yet, so Jin probably waited for something to happen. "Naruto-kun." He heard from behind him. He smiled upon recognizing her voice. "Hinata-chan, good morning," he said cheerfully and turned toward her. She ran up to him with a light blush on her face. "Good morning, Naruto-kun. I couldn't find you for few days." She stopped suddenly and sniffed him. "Naruto-kun, what is that smell?" she asked calmly. Naruto, however, felt a shiver running down his spine. "What the hell?" he thought. He sniffed his clothes and raised an eyebrow at her. "What are you talking about?" "I smell like I normally do," he said simply. Hinata looked at him strangely before she shook her head. "Must be my imagination," she said with a blush on her face and began to walk toward the academy. Naruto sighed and walked beside her. Naruto was sitting in his chair for a good 20 minutes waiting for Iruka-sensei to show up. "It's so boring. Where is Iruka-sensei anyway?" Naruto said aloud. Shikamaru sighed and slightly raised his head from the desk. "Probably Hokage-sama called him for something. I can only guess it's something about the team placement." Naruto nodded slightly at that. "You're right, it's probably nothing." He didn't get to finish as the classroom doors opened and Iruka walked in. However, he was ghostly pale. He walked to the front of the class and turned toward them. "Before I tell you about the team placement, there is something very important that Hokage-sama wants to tell you about." He finished and the doors opened once more and Hokage walked in, followed by few more people. Naruto's eyes went wide open when he saw his parents, Kurumi and Fujinin. One of them was Hotaki Kakashi himself. Naruto looked at Jin, who sent him a sad smile. He immediately knew what happened. He was forced to tell about them. Probably that Retsu woman. Only Kenpachi could force Nai-sama to something he didn't want. Naruto thought. Jin stepped in front of the class and cleared his throat, his pipe surprisingly gone. Many students stared in shock at Minato. "First, as you probably see, the fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze, is back with us. Same goes for his wife, Kushina Uzumaki." At that the class began whispering. "Uzumaki, isn't it the same as Naruto?" "Wait a minute, there was an Uzumaki clan once, but it was destroyed." "What, that dope has a clan?" "Silence!" Iruka shouted and all whispering ended. Jin sighed and shook his head. First of, Minato Namikaze didn't die. He and his wife entered a coma-like state from which they awakened few days ago. Ino suddenly raised her head, which earned her a curious glance from Jin. "Yes, Miss Yamanaka." Ino stood up and looked at Kushina. "I'm sorry, Hokage-sama, but it's the first time I heard about the fourth Hokage having a wife." At that even more people nodded in agreement. Jin crossed his arms over his chest and nodded. "Yes, that stupid council decided to erase that knowledge from history. The third Hokage was the one to propose such idea as it could help hide his illegal dealings." At that many students gasped and Jin lowered their heads. "But enough about it, the real thing I wanted to talk about was Naruto Uzumaki and that lovely lady beside me," he said, gesturing toward Kurumi. A look of horror crossed over Naruto's face as he began to shook his head lightly. Jin saw that and shook his head sadly. "Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, Naruto is their son." At that everyone looked at Naruto, who growled and tightened his hands into fists. However, before anyone could say anything, Kurumi stepped forward. "Naruto-kun," she said softly. Naruto looked at her. "It's better this way, better now than later." At her words, Naruto only scoffed and crossed his arms on his chest. "Do what you want, I don't care." With that said, he closed his eyes. Jin sighed and shook his head. "I knew it wouldn't be good," he thought and looked around the classroom. Many students were staring at Naruto in shock, some with anger and some with adoration. "Not that's out of the way, I should tell you the truth about the Kyuubi. She didn't died, she was merely sealed inside a baby, that baby being Naruto himself. However, she was released few days ago. Now for those that are scared of her, don't be, she was controlled back then, just like Madara Uchiha once controlled her." At that Sasuke perked up. Sharingan. He thought with a smirk. Now, she's with us, in this class. At that everyone began looking around in fear, Hinata however looked at the redeed beside the Hokage. Naruto-kun. She whispered softly, gaining his attention. The Kyuubi, it's that woman beside Hokage, isn't she? At that Naruto looked surprised for only a second before he nodded. Yes. Was his simple answer. Kurumi sighed upon looking around the class. Everyone. She shouted gaining their attention. She looked at them and her tails appeared from behind her shocking everyone. I'm the Kyuubi, Naruto Uzumaki's personal summon. She said in a voice full of pride. Nearly everyone gaped at her before looking at Naruto who wasn't there, the only thing left after him was a small cloud of black mist. Kurumi sighed and turned toward Jin. I will find him. She said and Jin nodded in agreement, then she disappeared in a swirl of fire. Jin sighed once more before looking around the classroom on noting several looks of disgust from other would-be genin and saddened expressions from Naruto's group. Well then, to clear any misunderstandings. Jin said as he clapped his hands few times. Naruto sighed as he walked down the main street of Konoha. He knew that it would happen sooner or later, but not like this. Everyone heard his secret and he felt the malicious intents from Sasuke which wasn't good at all. After few more minutes of walking around someone tapped his shoulder, he sighed and looked behind him, then his eyes went wide open. Liz. He said in surprise as Lisbeth smiled at him, a paper bag in hand. Naruto-kun, what happened, you seem to be restless. She said calmly. Naruto sighed and nodded lightly. Yeah, something happened at the academy and I really don't want to talk about it here. When he said that Lisbeth's eyes opened slightly wider and she smiled at him gently. Then why don't you come to my place, we can have some tea while you explain. At that he smiled and kissed her lightly on her forehead. Thanks Liz, you're an angel. At that Lisbeth blushed and the two of them began to walk down the street toward Red Light's district. When they walked through the district everyone bowed at the sight of Naruto which caused him to smile. That's why he liked this place, people respected him, no matter if it was a simple thug or a hooker. Naruto dono, Lisbeth dono. A female voice said from behind Naruto causing him to sigh. Nana-chan, I told you to just call me Naruto. He said calmly as he turned around toward the newly arrived woman. Nanao is a slim and youthful girl of around 164 centimeters in height with long black hair normally kept pinned back, with flat bangs that hang to the right side of her face. She has slightly light blue eyes that have a deep tint of violet and wears glasses with a slight oval shape to them. She wears long bluish-black kimono with white trimmings, held closed by a wide obi, and open-toed sandals with low heels. Indeed Naruto dono, you told me many times. At that Naruto sighed again. I just told you that you know what, whatever. He said without care and looked calmly at Nanao. So, what happened? He asked. Nanao nodded slightly and looked at Lisbeth. Kamraku-sama wanted to see you Naruto dono, Lisbeth dono can also come if she so wished. With that said Nanao turned and began to walk away, Naruto shrugged and followed her with Lisbeth close behind. After few more minutes of walking they arrived at a slightly run-down mansion. Several people in dark clothes patrolled the perimeters of the mansion, but they all bowed when they saw Nanao, Naruto and Lisbeth. They walked inside and saw several more dark-clothed people who also bowed to them. After walking down several corridors they arrived at the sturdy double door. Nanao knocked 3 times before entering. They walked into a barely decorated office with a heavy-looking wooden desk facing the door. Sitting behind the desk is a tall, light-skinned man of around 192 centimeters in height with high cheekbones, gray eyes and long wavy brown hair. His hair is tied in a long ponytail and has long bangs that frame the left side of his face. He also has thin facial hair around his mouth and on his cheeks. He wears black hakama pants, haori and wide obi around his waist. He also wears a Tsujigasa straw hat and a pink flowered lady's kimono, which he drapes across his shoulders, and over his haori, on his feet he wears jeta. Kamraku-sama, Naruto dono is here. Nanao said and walked up to the man's side. Kamraku smiled at them and inclined them to come closer. I heard that you became a genin Naruto, sorry for the late congratulations, but my people couldn't find you anywhere. At that Naruto laughed sheepishly and rubbed the back of his head. Yeah, sorry boss. I had something important to do outside the village. Naruto said, to which Kamraku nodded and reached toward a cabinet in his desk, from which he pulled out a bottle of sake in 3 saucers. Well then, why don't you drink with me, this old man needs company from time to time. At that Lisbeth sighed and stepped forward. I'm sorry Kamraku dono, we were in the middle of an important conversation when we were called here. At her words Kamraku's eyes shined in amusement for few seconds before he grinned. Well then, I can't interrupt your fun now, can I? At that both Naruto and Lisbeth blushed before Naruto cleared his throat. Well then, boss we should be going now. When Kamraku nodded Naruto turned around and began to walk toward the door, however he stopped after few seconds. Are you coming, Lisbeth? He asked in confusion, to which Lisbeth smiled. Wait outside Naruto-kun, there are some things I must talk about with Kamraku-sama. Naruto looked surprised at that, but nodded nonetheless. He walked out from the office, and Lisbeth sighed. Kamraku-sama, I need to ask you a favor. At that Kamraku turned serious for a while. Well then, let's hear this favor out. Nearly half an hour later Naruto and Lisbeth entered her apartment which looked exactly like that of Naruto, except it was mostly white. They walked inside the kitchen where Naruto sat on the chair, while Lisbeth set a kettle on the stove. Well then, Naruto-kun, what happened to make you so restless? When she asked that Naruto sighed. A few days ago I went to Kakura town for something happened there. Lisbeth nodded at that. Go on, I'm listening. She said as she turned off the stove and put tea bags into 2 mugs. She filled the mugs with water and added 2 teaspoons of sugar to her tea. You met my parents. Lisbeth nearly dropped the mugs as she walked toward the table. She looked at Naruto with wide eyes. What? She said in disbelief. Naruto sighed and shook his head. It seems that they weren't dead at all, only in something similar to a Komathi are in Konoha now. As he said that Lisbeth set the mugs on the table and turned toward the doors. Wait here Naruto-kun, I will be back soon. However Lisbeth didn't get too far as Naruto grabbed her right arm. Liz, don't do anything stupid, I don't want you to get in troubles. He said in worry. Lisbeth sighed and looked at him with uncertainty. Naruto-kun, what will you do? At her question Naruto sighed and shook his head. I didn't know, we really don't know. He said in a defeated tone. Lisbeth smiled and turned toward him before she hugged him, resting her head on his chest. Naruto sighed and rested his head on top of hers. Lizzie, love you. He said with a tiny smile gracing his face. Lisbeth nodded slightly with her own smile. I know Naruto-kun, I love you too. Lisbeth said calmly. Naruto lifted her head slightly and kissed her gently on her lips. Lisbeth closed her eyes in content and relaxed in his arms. After several seconds they pulled out from the kiss, leaving a thin string of saliva connecting their lips. Naruto-kun, I have something to ask you about. So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.